Already, very interesting topic. 2026 two-stroke lineup. Who doesn't love a good sounding two-stroke? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to hit pretty much all the 300cc two-stroke bands. Sometimes we're going to hit the 350 when it comes to Beta. And sometimes we're going to hit the 250 four-stroke when it comes to Yamaha, but let's get right into it. We're going to talk about the Yamaha first, and we're going to finish it with KTM. Normally I start with KTM, but this time I decided to change it a bit because you will see why. We're going to start with the four-stroke Yamaha, surprisingly. This bike is pretty much the bike in 2025, and from 2026 the Yamaha engineers realized the intake brings a lot of noise and they change that. That's pretty much the major changes, and that also comes with less power or something doesn't really click with it as of right now. The testers, they are going back to the 2025 intake. The reason why I'm saying that because there is a two-stroke Yamaha 2026. Only thing will change on it is the fork guard plastic. Everything else remains the same since a very, very long time. We all love that bike for what it is, but the things has moved on since then, and if you want to use that bike, you gotta change a lot. If you want to use it in the modern conditions like the way we are right now, which is not motocross anymore, more like Enduro, you have to change a lot of stuff on it to make it compatible, and it's still gonna be an agile monster. So much so Cody Webb actually couldn't figure it out how to make it right, so he had a lot of up and downs in the 25 season, and he ended up racing with the four-stroke in the 2026 season because it's just easier to manipulate. And this bike, if you haven't rode it, I truly recommend you to try it out. To me, is my favorite bike in 2025, unquestionably. That's pretty much what's the 250 two-stroke Yamaha lineup. Not much to talk about it, not much of a change. What's more interesting is the Italian friend, the Fantic. There is a lot of stuff going on over there, and when you're thinking about that's technically another Yamaha, it is and not. If you don't really know, they look like a Yamaha, but they are not Yamaha. So what it is, instead of they making the frame, which is really hard to make, to be right, and it takes a lot of years of development, they ending up buying the frame and the swing arm from Yamaha. The front suspension comes from KYB directly, so it has nothing to do with the OEM Yamaha spec. It's much softer, built for Enduro, and directly comes from KYB. It has nothing to do with Yamaha. So technically you have a 300cc two strokes, which has a 5-gear gearbox, and they build their own engine. It's a fuel injected, oil injected bike, and it has nothing to do with Yamaha far as the engine goes. It's a lovely race bike, more of a race bike. It's like a Sherco and Beta. Beta is more for a fun overall bike. Sherco is more race oriented, and it shows on the races, and Fantic tried to be competition for Sherco for as racing. The frame let them to have a very agile, very on-point bike when you're doing cornering, maneuverability. The Yamaha frame back in the days was the best motocross frame because the turning capabilities. There is a lot of good thing going on that bike. Far as smooth, controllable power. I don't really like there is no counterbalancing in there. So I never rode the Fantic, so I don't know. But if there is no counterbalancing, I'm sure there's a lot of vibration. There's no way to go around it apparently. When it comes to US, they import these bikes since late 2025. There's a dealer in California, and when it comes to it, it's very important to have a dealer. I'm still struggling with my stock. The dealer lineup is just not there. So if you're buying a bike which is low production or the dealers are just not well to build around in the US, you will suffering with supplies. You're not gonna have the parts right away, or you're not gonna have it at all, or it's gonna cost you way more money. So when it comes to choosing the bike, don't choose by instincts, oh, I like this, and people saying it, how good it is. You have to look everything what comes with the bike, good and bad, and this is one of them. So if you're buying a low production bike, let's say the TM, I don't know how hard to get parts for it, but I'm pretty sure it's in the same level as the Stark, like I'm explaining with my Stark. It's behind the camera right there. It's been done for 3 weeks and I'm still suffering to find a solution for it, but that's not the topic. So the other interesting thing what Fantic did in 2026 for the US market, they changed the mapping. So if you buy a bike over here in the US, it won't have the same mapping as the European bike. The reason for that, because the fuel what they're using in Europe, it's 98, that's the minimum, and then goes higher. Over here, the fuel, it's the octane is much lower, so the bike doesn't perform the same way. In my personal opinion, I would not buy a two-stroke Fantic, but I would buy the 300 four-stroke, because this thing is amazing, lacking a little bit of power, that 5 extra horsepower, but the 300 two-stroke, 300 four-stroke Fantic has, is just amazing. Let's talk about Sherco. The Sherco is a wonderful bike. I had one of those back in the days. I loved it. I rode it up in the mountains. That bike is just terrific. It pulls like a tractor. When you go up on the hills, the 300 two-stroke, it's just amazing. Small problem on my end, I hate carbureted bikes. The solution is kind of expensive, putting like the carbs in, but doesn't need a jetting like Smart Carbs, or there's other brands out there. But it comes to the price, it's like $800, $900. Downside for the Sherco is the clutch. You may know or you may not, they have Adler and Surplex clutch in there. The Adler is the one which is the terrible design. It has a lubrication problem and it just burns out if the clutch is fading quite quickly when you are doing serious ride on it. You can put the Surplex in there, but it needs some modification on the clutch basket to be able to fit it in. And then in 2020, Adler actually decided to copy the Surplex design, and they implanted into their design, because Sherco still haven't want to change the Adler clutch for some reason, but that clutch still not as good as it can be. KTM and all the other manufacturers except Beta, they all went away from that spring design. Even the pro racers in every level, they're begging for Sherco to change that, but for some reason they haven't. So if you have a Sherco, or you're planning to buy a Sherco in 2026, that's a lovely bike. You may not experiencing as much of a fading as the pro riders does, but you will experiencing quicker wear and shorter gear oil changing times. Besides that issue, they fixed the frame. They stiffened up some of the valves which they had problem with. The rear disc brake become a little bit lighter, same price, available in the USA. I think overall that could be a good choice in 2026, and it looks good too. Beta 300 RR. There is so much changed on that in 2026, so I actually have to read it up for you. Start with, they changed the frame, they made it stronger, they changed the shocks. Actually my only complaint, actually I have 2 complaints, but the major complaint is on that bike is the shocks. That shocks is just not a KYB, let's just put it that way, and that will tell you everything. And my second problem what I have with that bike is how wide is up front. They actually changed the radiator, they made it stronger. I'm wondering why they didn't make it narrower and taller, so they can have narrow, plastic up front, so you're gonna have a more racing feel on that bike. They also changed the axle. They went with 22mm rear axle. They changed some of the engine parts. They put a bigger crank bearing in there, and they redesigned the second gear for a smoother shift. They improved the feel on the front caliper somehow, so you're gonna have a better brake feel, and they changed the tail light, and they do something with the handlebar, like made it more adjustable than what was already. So those are the changes on the 300R. Seems to me that bike has a really strong customer base. People really love those bikes for what it is. It's still an old school bike in a modern era, like the Sherco. It's not as race oriented as a Sherco, so it's easier, more user friendly to ride than the Sherco, and it uses the Adler clutch. We just talked about that previously, so I'm not going to get into it. But overall, fantastic looking bike. When I rode the beta, I kind of left it like, okay, it's a good bike, but I don't really have like a wow factor, or I hate it. It's just a good bike, but it left me with no special feelings at all. There was no excitement and no hate, and that's kind of like a good feeling in a way, because then that the bike is just very good for a variety of people. They can enjoy the riding time on that bike so much. 350 beta, which is coming in 2026. I saw the test on it, and they tested the 350 with the 250, and the quick result was the only one choose the 350, three choose the 250 period, because they said it's just better. They also put the 350 on the dyno, and even if it's 350, it still produces 5 horsepower less than the 300 KTM. I'm pretty sure when it comes to the Kawasaki two-stroke dirt bike in next season, if you're looking for power, like crazy power and race-oriented specs, you will find it on that two-stroke. I mean, we're actually making the San Antonio SPC fit to the Kawasaki right now, and there's no wonder why. Let's just leave it like that. Already, the next bike on the list came from Spain. Very big, very old race heritage. Back in the days, they were the one who made the Gas, and the Gas get bought by KTM. We all know the story. And the bike what we talk about is called Rieju. For me, it's never really grabbed my attention. It doesn't really mean it's a bad bike. It's just, it's just not too many of them in the States. And Alfredo Gomez racing with it in Europe quite successfully. The bike has all the goodies, just like Sherco has, what the modern bikes need to be competing with all the other bikes. A little sidekick, the reason why I'm not talking about prices, because KTM lowered the prices, and because of that, all the other bikes like Sherco, Fantic, even this Rieju, they all cost the same. So if you want to buy it, it's a few $100s different, but pretty much all of them cost the same. So that's why we are not talking about prices. So in 2026, they have a fuel-injected counterbalanced engine, and it seems to me it's a very lovely platform. It works very well. The bike looks really, really good. To me, the Magura hydraulic clutch, I'm not in favor of Magura. I like Brembo way better, but that's what they have equipped with. They have a few racing parts, KYD suspension, and people seems to put trust into that bike, because the 2026 bike, what they supposed to come to the dealers, a lot of them are already pre-sold. The specs are very promising, and it could be a good fun bike. I just don't know much about it. I never had. Already, and then the big fish in the pond, KTM. I don't even have to stop the video to talk about it and look it up, some more details about that, because that I know. First of all, the changes in 2026, the biggest one to me is the customer service. They are willing to look into warranty cases, and they are willing to help customers with their problem now. That wasn't the case before. I don't know if you know that. There is a huge amount of problem about the cam failure in Europe. They have a lot of problems over there, but now seems to be the new ownership willing to look into those cases and try to help them as best as they can. To me, that's the biggest change. And in 2026, they're not going to change. They're just making all of these different looking bike, which is all the same, and so you guys can buy it. You have money, and then you want to have this edition, you want to have that edition, you have a hard enduro edition, you have a whatever factory edition, all kinds of edition, but technically they all the same for a special edition. They all comes with the factory suspension, the combat suspension, and they all have all of these race oriented gadgets on it. It's just under a different edition umbrella, and you buy that bike for $15,000, so KTM can make a lot more money. But I don't see the need for that. I think the regular bike works just as fine, unless if you have enough money to spend on it. I done that. I bought a factory edition previously. I was really happy about it showing up, but now I have my no edition KTM, and it serves me just as well. But that comes down to preferences. But I put the cone valve on mine just to have the full story. Those bikes are come stuck with that. They did a little tweak on it because 2024, when they introduced the TPI, they had a lack of power, let's just put it this way, and two-stroke performance come up with the solution. That's what I have on my bike, which is brings the bike back into life and giving more fuel, more oil when it's need to, and that way the bike not suffering oil, because there's a hot spot around the power valve, and if you don't have these mods done on your older bikes, it could overheat, it could cause potential issue. That happened many times in the past when the piston break, the crankcase break, everything. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, you don't want to get there. Two-stroke performance actually delivers a certain RPM range, more oil into the engine or more fuel into the engine, depends, W or XC, and that seems to help fixing the issue, and the engine can run freely to those RPM range without any problems. The other reason why KTM didn't change, because there's not much needs to be changed, and they already done so much in the past. They were the pioneer of developing, and we have these lovely platforms. I don't even see the point where we can go from here. I mean, I just really can't. These bikes are just amazing the way they are. But I had a lot of up and downs with this. I say that many times. I changed the piston in 30 hours. I've done a lot of stuff with it, but finally I'm 100% happy. So we are entering a new era in 2026 when people start realizing how important is the two-stroke, and they start bringing it back into races. You can more often see them everywhere than it was before, but because people, seems to me, they love them. They don't want to let that two-stroke feeling go away, so they just keep it alive. And what's more, manufacturers are starting to realize how important it is, so they move towards to manufacturing more special two-stroke dirt bikes like the 350 Beta, the Kawasaki two-stroke, what's coming up next year. Let me know what's your take out of all this. Which bike would you choose? Which bike would you consider to buy in 2026, if there is any? If not, then you are perfectly fine with your current bike. That's fine too. Cheers, and catch you on the next one.